بدأ الإسلام غريبا وسيعود كما بدأ غريبا فطوبى للغرباء.
غرباء 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 غرباء.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على عبده ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا مزيدا إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. In the first 3 halaqat we spoke about the hadith pertaining to strangers. بدأ الإسلام غريبا. Then in the last 2 halaqat we went over the statements of Waraqa radiallahu anhu to the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And today I wanted to begin speaking about what the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, who were strangers at the time, understood the consequence of their pledge on La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah to be. So while hardships were intensifying by Quraysh against Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the strangers in Mecca, Islam was rapidly flourishing and spreading nearby all throughout Medina, to the point that after 12 to 13 years into the messagehood, nearly every household in Medina had a member who had embraced Islam. The fresh, ripe Teuhīdit in the hearts of the Aus and the Khazraj, now united as the Ansar radiallahu anhum ajma'in, the heroes of Yathrib that was later renamed as Medina or Tiba, they couldn't leave Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, being oppressed, seeking a refuge and safe haven to spread the Tawheed of Allah, facing the hostility of Quraysh, while they lived at ease and ate with their children at peace. So after 13 years of messagehood, a delegation of 75 strangers from Medina went to pledge loyalty to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam during the Hajj season. And that was a year after the previous delegation gave a pledge. They said, حتى متى نترك رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يطرد في جبال مكة ويخاف فرحل إليه منا 70 رجلا. Jabir ibn Abdullah narrated that the Sahaba in Medina said, until when are we going to leave Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ousted in the mountains of Mecca in fear? So 70 of us headed to him. 75 strangers in the most accurate figure, as Ibn Ishaq rahimahullah mentioned. And that's consistent of 73 men and 2 women. Ibn Abdul Barr rahimahullah, and the hadith that I just mentioned on the authority of Jabir ibn Abdullah and others, mentioned that it was 70. That slight discrepancy in some history books, in some narration, is most likely due to the fact that Arab rounded off figures. The 2 women who attended were Asma bint Amr bin Adi al-Sulamiyya al-Ansariyya. And some say her name was actually Asma bint Adi ibn Amr. She went to give the pledge with her husband Khadij ibn Salama ibn Aus. She's the cousin of the famous Sahabi Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu. Her kunya is Shubath or Mania. And she conceived her baby Shubath by the will and blessing of Allah on the exact night of the pledge. And when you read something like that in the books of Seerah, that she gave birth on the night of the pledge, knowing the circumstances that surrounded the pledge, let your mind ponder a little bit on that. That means she traveled from Medina to Mecca in the very final stages of her pregnancy. And that road, up until recently, was considered a death highway with cars. When I was younger, it was a 2-lane highway where many people died, and it was rare for you to pass through it without seeing casualties. All the way until a more adequate road was paved in the mid-80s. So imagine Shubath 14 centuries ago, traveling on foot, enduring what we know women endured during that period, combined with the difficult, hot journey in the desert, toppled with fear from Quraysh, then postpartum difficulties, and then the hardships of traveling back, and now traveling back, but with a newborn infant. All that sacrifice, and after all that sacrifice, she didn't recline back and live off her legacy of witnessing the pledge and the hardships she endured. And what a legacy that is. Rather, she continued on in her devotion, even joining in the battle of Khaybar until its victory, radiallahu anha. The second Sahabiya that witnessed the pledge is Umara Nasiba bin Ka'b ibn Amr al-Ansariya. And note here the way the short vowels, the tashkil, are pronounced. The kunya, her kunya or nickname, Umara, بضم العين وتخفيف الميم, meaning with a dhamma on the ayn, o, and a fatha, no shadda on the mim, Umara, as specified by many scholars like Al-Mullah Ali Al-Qari in Sharh Mishkat Al-Masabih, and Abdul Rahman Al-Mubarak Furi in Tuhfat Al-Ahwadi Sharh Jami' Al-Tirmidhi, among others. That's her kunya. Her name is pronounced Nasiba. And this is another error many fall into. It's a detail overlooked by many, even some books that have the tashkil in it. We should know all the details about our salaf, their females and their males. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with all of them. Let me clear it up. The one who attended the pledge is Umara Nasiba bin Ka'b ibn Amr al-Ansariya. If you look carefully into the biography books on the names of the Sahaba, the books of the Tarajim, there's to the best of my recollection 7 Sahabiyat with the name Nusayba or Nasiba. The source of confusion comes from the fact that unlike English, in Arabic they're spelled identically the same. Nusayba and Nasiba are spelled identically the same, with only a difference in the harakat, the tashkil, the short vowels. Some of the 7 were with a fatha on the noon and a kasra on the sin, Nasiba. And some were with a dhamma on the noon and a fatha on the sin, Nusayba. The most popular of the 7 is Umara and Atiyya. And what's more amazing and confusing is that Umara and Atiyya share the same name, Nusayba bin Ka'b and Nasiba bin Ka'b, with the exception of few ulama who say Atiyya was Nusayba bint al-Harith. So their names are identical according to the majority, but their kunya is different. And to add more to the confusion, there's a lot of similarities in their lives. They joined the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam in battles, and they had knowledge in a hadith that they related and conveyed, and they sacrificed dearly for this deen, but they are in reality 2 different women with 2 different kunyas and a slight difference in the short vowels on the names, Nusayba and Nasiba. Both of them were referred to as Al-Ansariya, meaning they gave victory to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam with the Ansar in Medina, so they're both referred to as Al-Ansariya. Nusayba and Nasiba is a feminine name, and linguistically speaking on their meaning, it's a name that refers to someone who's of an honorable, noble lineage with an honorable, noble character. Let me break down the names so you get them. The one we mentioned for our purposes here, the one who joined the pledge, is Umara Nasiba. This is the one that many attempt to name their daughters after, because she's famous for being the first woman to physically take on the sword in defense of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she witnessed the pledge and did much more for this deen in Teuhīdit. Yet when some attempt to name their daughters after this one, they want this one, they end up referring to her as Nusayba with a dhamma, which is another one I'll mention briefly to clear it up. Umara Nasiba not only witnessed this pledge, the pledge of Aqaba, but she also witnessed the pledge of Ridwan, in the battle of Uhud, in the battle of Hudaybiyah, in the battle of Hunayn, in the battle of Yamama. Al-Dhahabi said, Jahadat wa fa'alat al-afa'il. Al-Dhahabi said she fought and did the wondrous wonders. His words that she did the wondrous wonders never departed my mind since I read it in Seria A'lam al-Nubala as a teenager. Wa fa'alat al-afa'il, because wallahi she truly did. Radiyallahu anha. She was honored with the firm stance in defending the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the battle of Uhud, where she physically fought and defended him with a sword. She was wounded in numerous battles, One wound to her shoulder was so severe and painful that she nursed it for an entire year. Her hand was cut off in the battle of Al-Yamama during the time when Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was the Khalifa radiallahu anhu. And he personally would attend to her and visit her and inquire about her condition due to her high status with the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And even the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam before him, upon returning from Uhud where she was wounded, defended him, he didn't sallallahu alaihi wasallam enter his house until he sent Abdullah al-Mazini to inquire about her condition from the wounds she suffered. And he rejoiced at her well-being. After them, when Umar radiallahu anhu was the Khalifa, he would receive gifts and send them, or a portion of them, to her in honor and respect to her sacrifice and dedication radiallahu anha. The respect and admiration that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his best two friends radiallahu anhum gave her tells all about her noble status. She was also a woman of knowledge, because there's hadith on her authority in the books of Sunan. There's some hadith that she relayed in Sunan al-Tirmidhi and Sunan al-Nasa'i and Sunan ibn Majah. Her husband was Zayd ibn Asim ibn Ka'b, and her sons were Habib ibn Zayd ibn Asim and Abdullah ibn Zayd ibn Asim ibn Ka'b. Every single one of them was a lesson in a school in their devotion, commitment, and sacrifice to La ilaha illallah and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Habib ibn Zayd ibn Asim, her son, just take that for example. He had the honor of being chosen by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to carry a message to the arrogant liar Musaylam al-Kadhdhab to admonish and warn him. And that was the message that enraged Musaylam al-Kadhdhab, who violated the protocols of that time of not harming ambassadors, just like it is today. He ordered that Habib ibn Zayd ibn Asim be shackled and held a captive. Then he had his men torture him in preparation so that he can summon him before his followers in order to break him down. So Musaylam al-Kadhdhab brought this young youth after a night of torture in shackles and asked him, "Do you bear witness Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the messenger?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Do you bear witness I'm the messenger?" In mockery, he said, "In my ears is deafness from what you say. I can't hear what you're saying. My ears have been blocked off against anything that you've been saying or claiming or alleging." One wouldn't expect anything less from a lion raised by a lioness who was severely wounded, protected Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He ordered his henchmen to cut off and sever a limb from Habib ibn Zayd's body, and when his limb settled near him, he asked him the same question again, repeating those questions over and over. Every time Musaylama would order his henchmen to sever a limb from Habib ibn Zayd's body, which falls on the ground besides a previously severed limb, Habib ibn Zayd, her son, who she raised, and that's how women should raise their kids, he could have escaped all that torture, all the torture he endured, and his torturous death, just by a pretense of his faith in Musaylam al-Kadhdhab's prophethood. His faith would not have been questioned or blemished or doubted, because this would be one of the most ideal examples of ikrah or duress. But Habib ibn Zayd, who was raised by such a woman, held himself to the highest standards from the moment he witnessed the pledge and witnessed how his mother was, and he carried on his shoulders the responsibility that ensued his oath and faith to the fullest, until the very last moments of his life, uttering Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with his limbs surrounding his body, preceding him to Jannah inshallah. That's one of her sons. And take for example her other son, Umara's other son. He was no different, and it shouldn't surprise you. Abdullah ibn Zayd al-Mazini, he is the one who narrated the detailed famous hadith on wudu, the one we studied in fiqh. Abdullah ibn Zayd ibn Asim al-Mazini يذكر أنه رأى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم توضأ فمضمض ثم استنثر ثم غسل وجهه 3 ويده اليمنى 3 والأخرى 3 ومسح برأسه بماء غير فضل يده وغسل رجليه حتى أنقاهما. I want to show you that they were in the forefront of knowledge, of ilm, just like they were in the forefront of defending Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam in every possible way. Every ideal Muslim and Muslimah should be like that. Al-Waqidi, Al-Dhahabi said that this man, Abdullah bin Zayd, is the one who killed Musaylama al-Kadhab. Musaylama, the arch arrogant liar, this man is the one who killed him. But some say Wahshi killed him. The one who killed Hamza radiallahu anh before Islam. They say he's the one who killed Musaylama after his Islam. Which is true in a way, but Wahshi in his own narrative cleared that conflict. Wahshi said radiallahu anh, that I took the spear that I killed Hamza with to kill the worst man, which is Musaylama. And he said, as I prepared to throw the spear, a man from the Ansar prepared to attack Musaylama. And he had a sword. The moment we seen an opening and we seen Musaylama, I threw the spear and the man from the Ansar that was with the sword attacked Musaylama. Wahshi radiallahu anh says, Allah knows which one of us killed him. If it was me, then I killed the best man, then I killed the worst of all people. What he's trying to say is that he attempted to compensate or make up for his sin of killing Hamza before Islam by killing the worst man, Musaylam al-Kadhab. That man from the Ansar that Wahshi was mentioning is Abdullah ibn Zayd, even though he didn't specify his name. He's the second son of Umara, Nasiba bint Ka'b al-Ansariya. He died in the battle of Al-Harra. That was Umara, who attended the pledge. And to clear up the confusion in the names, the other one with a similar name is Atiyya Nusayba bint Ka'b, or Nusayba bint al-Harith according to some. It's in the diminutive form with a short vowel of a dhamma on the noon and a fatha on the sin. Nusayba. Ibn Abd al-Barr in al-Isti'ab, he said her name is not Atiyya Nusayba bint Ka'b, it's Atiyya Nusayba bint al-Harith. But many document her as Atiyya Nusayba bint Ka'b. Not only, as I said, are the names spelled identical with a difference in the kunya and the short vowels, but their lives were very similar. This one, she said in her own words, قالت غزوت مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم 7 غزوات أخلفهم في رحالهم فأصنع لهم الطعام وأداوي الجرحى وأقوم على المرضى. In Sahih Muslim, she said, I took part with the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم in 7 battles. I would stay behind the camp of men, I would cook their food, treat their wounded, and nurse their sick. She narrated a total of approximately 40 hadith. 6 of them were agreed upon in Bukhari and Muslim. One was in Bukhari alone, and one was Muslim in Sahih Muslim alone. She was the one who had the honor of washing the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam's daughter Zainab radiallahu anha when she died. She moved to Al-Basra, where she taught, specializing in shrouding, preparation, and burial of the deceased. The Sahaba and the Tabi'een used to travel to learn from her because the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught her firsthand how to wash his daughter Zainab, and they wanted to learn firsthand from her. She became a principal in teaching this matter, and she taught it to many of the biggest Sahaba. So Ibn Makola in his book Al-Ikmal, who died approximately 930 years ago, he mentioned the clarification on the short vowels of the names. He said, أما نسيبة بضم أولي وفتح ثاني فهي نسيبة عطية الأنصارية، وأما نسيبة بفتح أوله وكسر ثاني فهي عمارة نسيبة الأنصارية رضي الله عنها. Abu al-Faraj ibn al-Jawzi, who lived approximately 100 years after Ibn Makola, in his book Talqih Fuhum Ahl al-Athar, he reiterated what Ibn Makola mentioned pertaining to Nasiba and Nusayba. Most who came after Ibn Makola adopted his view, even there was a slight difference in opinions. Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, who came nearly 350 years after Ibn Makola, he reiterated in his book Tafsir al-Muntabih he mentioned what Ibn Makola stated. Then again, Ibn Hajar, in other book, Al-Isaba fi Tamyiz al-Sahaba, he said for Atiyya, it's with a dhamma and some, qeel, and it's alleged that it's with a fatha. He's just trying to mention a second view, or mention in the second view. He also mentioned the second opinion about Atiyya being Nusayba bint al-Harith rather than Nusayba bint Ka'b. Ibn Nasir al-Din al-Dimashqi in Tawdih al-Mushtabah fi Asma' al-Ruwa. He was at the time of Ibn Hajar, around the time of Ibn Hajar. He mentioned the opinions and then he said the majority are on what Ibn Makola stated, which is what I broke down to you. There's other much weaker, rare opinions like Ibn Ishaq, who said in Al-Maghazi it's nisba. He said it's nisba. At-Tabarani put her in al-lam and said it's lisba. Put her instead of a noon, al-lam. Those are rare, weaker opinions. This is something that should be noted because both sahabiyat are very famous. We take great pride in how detailed and thorough the knowledge of biographical evaluation, the science of the narrators of the Sahaba, their men and their women is. So let me now give you a summarized recap to clear the confused faces. I only went into details for Tullab al-Ilm. They'll appreciate it and benefit from it. But everyone can benefit and should benefit from the summary of how the names are pronounced. Umara, Nasiba, bint Ka'b, ibn Amr al-Ansariya. She's probably most famous for defending the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Battle of Uhud with a sword. She joined the pledge in many numerous other battles. Her two sons fought Musaylama and she narrated many hadith. That was who? Umara Nasiba bint Ka'b al-Ansariya, who witnessed the pledge of Al-Aqaba. Now the other one, Atiyya Nusayba bint Ka'b, she joined the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam in 7 battles. She moved to Al-Basra after the death of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she washed the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam's daughter Zainab and became an expertise on teaching that topic. So before I conclude, I know I went over the time limit, and I didn't even mention what I planned to mention pertaining to the pledge. But what I mentioned of their names led to a brief biography, and then the issues pertaining to their names came to mind. And even though it's slightly off what I intended to mention today, it still falls under the general topic of strangers. My point in starting off with the Al-Aqaba pledge was an attempt to get at 2 statements 2 of the Sahaba mentioned as they were about to give the pledge to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Every stranger, every muwahhid and every muwahhida must understand and comprehend. We'll mention them inshallah in the next halaqah. If this was the women strangers of that time who did the wonders, as Al-Dhahabi said, for Islam and Teuhīdit and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then imagine what their men did. Women excused as women, and excused and exempted again due to pregnancy and other factors. Yet they refused but to be participants in building this mighty edifice, given their pledges and carrying upon their shoulders the responsibility that ensued their oath to its fullest. With that achievement, dedication, commitment, sacrifice, they reached the highest ranks in this dunya and insha'Allah in the akhirah. They made history and became memorable and spectacular enough to influence and change the course of history. They were icons worthy of veneration in their service to La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, and they became a radiant, illuminating light for those who want to achieve success in both worlds. In another lesson, take a moment, ya muwahhid and ya muwahhida, to reflect, knowing how much these strangers endured in their commitment and in their sacrifice. Knowing that eases your suffering. Their lives and wounds and limbs being severed for this tawheed makes all of our suffering, if any, feel like a mild surface abrasion. They suffered as strangers, and if anyone was to be exempted from trials and suffering, it would be them, as they had Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam among them. But hardships are part of this course. In another very final reflection, when you know their life and history and how they met Al-Aqaba in secrecy, relate that to what you see and know today. What would those 75 be labeled today by the munafiqeen, the hypocrites? Whose path of the people of today most resembles those 75? Be honest with yourself. Because the path you choose is a determining factor between Jannah and Jahannam. It's not about comfort and luxury. Who of the ulama and dua and people of today talk and walk like them, whose tone resembles them? And then, who of the people of today would be back in Mecca with their Wali al-Amr Abu Jahl, egging and giving fatwas and justifications for Abu Jahl to hurl fireballs from his ballista to burn Shubath in the arms of his mother, along with Umara and the rest of the 73, labeling them as Khawarij who deserve it, and then teaching Abu Jahl how to utter the word Khawarij, having nothing against them except that they believe in Allah the Almighty, worthy of all praise, and that they rebelled against Kufr and the leader of Kufr, Abu Jahl, and met in secrecy behind his back and against his will. The answer is clear, and it's as clear as the sun in the clear summer sky for the hearts that haven't been polluted with desires and doubts. We'll continue tomorrow, inshallah. Jazakum Allah khair. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.